Good morning, everyone, and I want to welcome you guys back into the shop. And as usual, I want to thank you guys that have hit the subscribe and of course the like button. So today, as you can see behind me, I've got Kevin's cab back from the body shop. He's got most of the body is pretty much in the final prime stage. So today I'm going to set the cab back on the chassis, and then hopefully later on my buddy Chris is going to come to the shop and we've got to build out the front clip and fit the hood since we had to replace it. So anyway, want to thank you guys once again, and stick around and let's see if we can get this thing looking like a truck again today. See you in just a bit. It's either cars or airplanes. There it goes again. Okay, before I get too carried away, I want to go over what we've got here so far. So in the last video you guys saw, we were able to get the steering and the front suspension completely built out, as well as I was able to get the rear axles in, put the brake assemblies and stuff back on the rear axle, and actually got the chassis back as a roller. So today, like I said, we're going to set the body back down and build out the front clip. As for the chassis, once we get this thing built out, we'll pull this stuff back apart, put the cab back in the rotisserie, and the chassis will be waiting basically until we get the paint. There are only a few things that I'll be able to do to this after that point, which is basically the brake lines and maybe the fuel lines, possibly the exhaust system, but I would like to have all the weight on the truck before I start doing that. So anyway, I'm going to reposition cameras and get set up, and then we're going to see if we can get this thing unbolted and then lower this thing down into place. What a pain. That rotisserie did not want to come off that cab. I guess with all the sandblasting, the sand got up into the tubes and it didn't want to slide apart. So ended up putting another part of another rotisserie up against the legs of the tube post, and I was able to pull it apart. But anyway, I'm getting ready to set this cab down, and one thing that I'm kind of fortunate, I have a whole bolt bin full of grade 2 bolts, anywhere from 1/4 inch all the way up to 1 inch bolts, and they're all basically anywhere from 6 inches to a foot long. And what I'm going to do, I've taken 4 of those, and I'm going to cut the heads off of them, cut the bolt head off of them, and I'm going to stick these in the mounts of the cab, and then I'm going to lower this down and kind of help guide these into the body bushing. So anyway, just wanted to share that. I'm a big I use guide bolts anytime I get a chance, so we'll see if we can get this thing set down. Okay, now that I have the cab set down, you can kind of see how these guide bolts worked. I had just a little bit of issue on the passenger side. My caster kept hanging up. There's a small crack in my concrete where the concrete's not quite level, and I had to move the cab back farther on the lift arms than I wanted to. So that was kind of hindering me there. But anyway, I've got the cab lifted up, and actually got the whole truck lifted up, and I'm using a urethane bushing, which these things, I was hoping to get factory bushings, but I couldn't find the actual factory bushings. And this is what I was able to get from LMC. So anyway, I've got these in. I'm basically just need to remove the guide bolts. These things are stacked with a bushing, and then pretty much just have the mating bushing underneath. This is pretty straightforward. They're gonna go up in here, and we'll get these things all ran up. And then once I get this thing ran up, then I'm gonna have to figure out a way to square the cab off on the chassis. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of the bolts in it, and we'll get it squared up, and we'll go from there. Okay, I found something that's very interesting with these square bodies. If you'll notice, there's a hole right here in the cab mount. Additionally, there's a hole right here. And conventional wisdom, so to speak, would tell me that I should be able to just line those up. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to take a bar, or once again, my bolt bin has come in handy. I'm going to insert that bolt and get these things pretty much lined up. There's also one up here on the front mounts as well. So I think that's, to be fair, I think that's what those were intended for, and that's what I'm gonna use. Okay, I've got the cab bolted down to the chassis, and I ended up using the factory original, the mounts that I actually took off the truck. So I want to kind of revisit this. I was talking earlier where I said I couldn't actually find them. What I meant to say was, when I ordered my cab mounts from LMC, I thought I was going to get the original, basically the OEM style cab mount. Well, that was not the case. What I ended up getting was these urethanes. And these work probably really well. I've actually got these on other vehicles, and they do work well, but they just didn't seem like they wanted to pull the cab down as tight, and the cab felt like I could still shift it and move it just a little bit. So I bolt the original ones back in, and I will go out and buy the factory duplicates. And that dude has been circling this area all morning. So anyway, I will buy the new bushings. So right now, to finish out the fitment, I've got the old ones in place. So I'm gonna get set up, and we'll start putting the core support on, and hopefully we can get the doors stuck on this thing, and then get the front clip built out. All right, good morning everyone. We're back in the shop today, and today I've got my buddy Chris Cornett. Chris has been doing body work for
30 years.
30 years. I figured it was at least 30, 35.
Yeah.
So anyway, Chris is the guy that's been doing the body work on the on Kevin's C-10, and additionally, some of the other cars that we have in the shop, Chris will end up doing the body work and stuff on those as well. So anyway, we're gonna get after it. He brought the doors. We're gonna hang the doors in the front clip, and then, like I said, the biggest reason we need to do what we're doing today is we got to be able to test fit this new hood. So I'm gonna set the camera up, and we're gonna get right after it and get this thing assembled. we got the front clip lined up pretty good. We went ahead and rolled the truck back forward. We've pulled the front wheels off. We're gonna test fit the fender wells, and then the next thing we're gonna grab is the hood. So, you ready?
Ready.
Right on. Okay, after about, I don't know what, a couple of hours worth of massaging, good grief, man. This is the example or the reason why we had to pre-fit this hood. I'm gonna grab the camera a little bit and I'll let Chris kind of explain what we had to do. But one thing I want to bring to your attention is be very careful on the edges of these new fenders and hoods and what have you, because Chris called it, I stepped on the dog. Chris called it out. I don't know if you can see it through all the dirt, but the edges of those things are extremely sharp. So that dude laid me open pretty good. So I'm gonna grab the camera and we'll talk a little bit about what we're gonna do. And then guess what? We're gonna tear it all back apart. So we'll see you in just a second.
Okay, so as Steve said, we're got this all fitted up. Even though we have got mostly original sheet metal in this truck, we did have to buy an aftermarket hood because the previous hood was just too bad a shape. So that requires extra time, extra fitting. And if you look at some of these gaps, they don't exactly fit just right. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm actually gonna have to add right through here to get this gap to look good and presentable. It's going to have to take a little bit of time, and so on the other side of the vehicle, if you'll notice, the gap is really nice and true. This is not really a bad hood. They make some pretty cheap hoods, and then this was a little bit better quality hood that we've got, so it actually going to work out pretty good with us.
Yeah, the gaps look pretty good for considering this aftermarket. I know you guys have watched me on that 69 Camaro, and man, the gaps on that thing were horrible. Gap looks good across there, so.
Yeah. We don't have it fine-tuned, but it's really close. It's good enough. It can go to the paint shop now and do their thing.
There, you mean your?
My thing. Yeah.
You're in your you're in your helper.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, that's I'm pretty pleased with it. I know Chris has been doing these cars for good grief. He's been doing restoration work with his father-in-law. They build some absolutely beautiful cars, and like I said, he's very meticulous at this stuff, and pretty glad. I'm glad he's on board for this. So anyway, I think with that being said, you got anything else, Chris?
No, I just don't think. I think that's about it. I think we're good. Just remember that the parts don't fit right on the vehicle right out of the box.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny you say that, because in some of my previous videos on this truck, I did talk about something as simple as dadgum leaf springs. I had to eat a $500 and some set of leaf springs because I painted them and got them all prepped and ready. So Anyway, hey, I think that's going to kind of do it on the assembly. I'm going to put the time lapse back on, and we're going to tear this thing back apart. So hopefully the next time you see this thing together, it will be in the body color, and we'll be doing the final assembly. So anyway, we're going to rip her back apart and keep on pushing.
Okay.
Okay, we got the front clip pulled back off. Notice we did leave the doors on the cab. I'm getting ready to pull the cab and put it back on the rotisserie. So he'll end up probably painting the cab with the doors on the cab. So anyway, one other thing, if you guys noticed when we were putting this thing together, we were putting basically shims in different places. And as we tore this thing apart, we laid these shims out, and I've put them in bags and I've marked those locations. So when we get this thing back for paint, we won't have quite such a large piece of the puzzle to put together. So anyway, I want to thank Chris for coming up and agreeing to be on film. Sometimes it's not easy to stand in front of a camera, and no telling who's going to be watching this thing. But anyway, I'm going to pull the cab back off the chassis, probably roll the chassis back up front, and for the most part, that's about all I'm going to be able to do to the truck until it comes back from paint, with the exception of some lines and hoses to put on the chassis. So anyway, I'm going to get set up and we'll pull this thing back off. So I'll see you in just a bit.